Hey, everybody. This is the panel discussion for September, Client Success, Customer Support Executive Brain Trust. Today, we talked a lot about intelligent swarming. Our guest speaker was Sarah Feldman with the consortium, and she presented a lot on how models are shifting and changing more into an intelligent swarming model. Now, she went through, the consortium has a you can go to their website and find out more about this type of a model, but there were several of our members who have implemented it, are currently implementing it, we're about to implement it, and we had a lot of questions. We had a lot of great discussion around visibility to impact. This is now the panel discussion, and we've got some great Brain Trust members with us here today. And before I turn the time over to Sarah, she's actually going to answer a question that Geetha had. And so I'm going to turn the time over to Geetha to kind of frame up what she's seen and what are current challenges with using intelligent swarming in a support model. So Geetha, over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Sarah, for coming up with this presentation this afternoon on intelligent swarming. I enjoyed it. The places that I have worked, we have been using intelligent swarming. And one of the issues that we do find is initially when we launch something like this, it goes great for a few months maybe, and people tend to fall off the wagon. And this again back to requesting people to take the case, please take the case, please. It's already all kind of a thing. Do you have any suggestions or anything that we could have done better or we could do better?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I can't help but plug the Intelligent Swarming Practices Guide, which really does walk through all of the elements and components that our members have road tested to really figure out how to keep an initiative like this ongoing. It does include various components that work in system together, the recognition piece, connecting people, allowing people to collaborate. So can't help but plug that. But without knowing the specifics, hearing you say that folks sort of stopped, lost some of their enthusiasm, there's a couple things that can lead to that. One would be that you haven't done a thorough review of, are you accidentally hindering the program in some other way? So earlier in the discussion, I talked about really getting buy-in across the organization from all stakeholders. So you need to have alignment, especially from the top. We talk about executive sponsors who've sort of agreed that this is the way we're doing things now. This is what we care about. We're going to lessen how we used to look at things. Closing cases the fastest is not the most important, but collaborating and getting customers their answer the fastest, and learning from each other becomes the focus. So a lot of times, like job descriptions and quarterly goals and KPIs that continue to be looked at are in conflict with the intelligent swarming practices. So it's important to do like a really holistic review that organizationally you're making the shift altogether, and you're not accidentally sort of giving mixed messages in certain ways. And then it's really about continuing to highlight and sort of hype up how great the collaboration is, like celebrating people when they take on a case that maybe they don't know the answer to yet, but they know that they can figure it out by relying on their peers. And one of the ways that helps to do that is in KCS, knowledge-centered service methodology, a lot of times we talk about your KCS champions, and these are people who aren't necessarily leaders or have official roles, but they're people who are just super bought into the idea, totally get it. They're your hype people, and often they're sort of respected go-to people on the team that you kind of can keep pointing to them to sort of lead by example. Is another thing that can work.
All right, thank you.
Do you have a sense of why folks sort of dropped off in terms of their enthusiasm? What was hindering them?
So various things, right? One is the case volume as it goes up and the number of cases that are there in the queue to be picked up. Invariably, like you said, are we inadvertently giving them mixed messages? The message is always that you can't leave cases hanging at the end of the shift, right? Because the next shift comes in and they don't want to pick it up, right? So the focus has to be on the queue, basically. That's how you can't leave your shift without taking care of the queue itself, right? Who's going to take care of it otherwise, right? So things as you go about helping each other and all that camaraderie, all these things were great when we had a control on the volume of cases coming in. And as that went up and we lost a lot of people to either burnout or they were just so, everybody works in this field only for 2 years. That is the tenure now we have to look for. Like my manager told me, when you bring in somebody, don't expect them to be here for 5 to 10 years and all those days are all gone. It's only 2 years, right? So in 2 years, there will be times when we go through ups and downs during the cycle of our support tickets, that it could be October and we have the influx of cases and we lose 3-4 people in 1 month, right? And these are all senior people who have been in the organization for so long that they were taking the most cases or at least helping out the rest of the team. So we are starting from ground zero now, going and recruiting 4 people as backfills and training them into this whole concept and everything and getting their buy-in, and we are starting everything all over again type of stuff. So it might be it might not be something that, I understand the methodology, but sometimes we'll have to tweak the methodology to meet the business needs sometimes, right? So that's probably
always.
Yeah.
Yeah, always. With the intelligence swarming methodology, and this says this very explicitly in the practices guide, that these are the principles and core concepts and the practices that you need to have in place, but 100% you are going to adapt it to make those practices a reality in your organization. So no 2 programs are going to look the same ever.
Yeah.
Do you have a strong knowledge program as part of your support team, like a knowledge base or a KCS practice?
Yes, a fairly good one, yes.
Yeah, and then as part of the knowledge practice and that case volume, that sort of, I know that feeling of the cases are just sort of flooding in, was there effort to turn some of those takeaways from support into product improvements? So to actually eliminate those problems from even becoming cases in the first place?
That's always the continuous improvement process that we are part of. And that has got a very strong engagement from our engineering team as well, to review cases that are happening more than even once or twice. So that part is okay. Typically the influx of cases is largely because by October timeframe, pretty much we are hiking up our sales, right? Because before the holidays, we want to sell as much as we can. So we have an influx of customers coming in, which is a great thing, right? But we also have product releases going on at the same time, new product improvements that went out the door just in September, October timeframe. So everything combined, it can be
overwhelming.
It can be hard. Yeah, overwhelming, right.
Absolutely. Is self-service a thing that you all focus on for your customers?
Not so much, no.
Okay, so that's probably the missing piece. I mean, not to make it as simple as that. Oh, I found the one thing. No, it's it's always complex. But finding a way to enable self-service for your customers, especially in intelligence swarming and KCS, we talk a lot about new versus known issues. So in an ideal world, as soon as you know about an issue, you've gotten one case. In an ideal world, you never get that same case again. That's not going to happen. But once it's a known issue, you have opportunities to either address it at the root cause to prevent the problem from happening in the first place, or at least enable self-service. So some customers have the ability to solve that problem on their own before they're contacting you, and that really can free up some time and capacity among your folks from answering the same things over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more to it. We can definitely keep talking as you go too, but I would say self-service sounds like the biggest opportunity to then reduce some of that volume. So that, and then really just having folks, stick to the process of handling cases, making sure that people understand that part of their job is to help their peers when they get stuck, that's equally an important thing as taking a new case, because that's still solving a case. Mike, did you have a question, or do you have some observations based on what you've been hearing us chat about?
Yes. Well, firstly, thank you, Sarah, for the presentation. Excellent. Very interesting. I have a question, actually. The environment I've come from is fairly complex in terms of support. So we have, the simple cases and the very complex ones that can take months to resolve, where you really need a team of support people and development people to work on. And we have customers that are kind of used to either doing sort of transactional, where they just call in, problem gets resolved, or they're used to having a dedicated person that they call in, and that provides continuity. And that dedicated person is important because it provides a lot of customer value, essentially, and part of the commercial program sort of provided for that. So the problem we're trying to solve, and I'm interested if you think that swarming will be a way of solving it, because that's what we're looking at, was to say, okay, we want to keep that interface to the customer very, very much the way it is, but internally, rather than having dedicated teams the way they are, actually have a lot more sharing. So, and part of the reason for that is maybe two reasons. One is that the people that are on the queue are probably handling a lot more cases than somebody that's just dealing with a few customers a day.
Sure.
So you have an efficiency issue, but you also have an issue of collaboration. You have an issue of people sort of seeing that group of people that are dedicated to customers are somehow at a different level than where they're operating at. So the idea was that a lot more sharing, a lot more swarming to really solve these problems quicker, but also redistribute the load, and also get people that are fairly new feel like they're part of solving these bigger problems. They're not just taking these one-off tools. That was the concept. So my question for you is, does that sound like the type of thing that swarming would help to address?
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer the first thing that I sort of heard you talking about in terms of, can you have a hybrid mode? This is a question we hear a lot with intelligent swarming. Like, well, if we're just going to completely abandon queues or case assignment, could there be some negative consequences there? And the customer experience is an important one. If you have customers who are expecting to talk to Bob, like, let that customer talk to Bob. That's the idea with connecting people to work in intelligent swarming, is you connect the work, the case, the customer, to the person that's best suited, or the person or people that are best suited to handle that. So if that is one person, then that is going to be one person. What intelligent swarming recommends is this idea of work profiles and a common classification for your people and the work. So the people includes both the requesters, your customers, and your responders. And you delineate things according to skill level and areas of interest rather than tiers, is what we've talked about, why we dismantle that. So if you can categorize what people know and the types of cases people have in this common classification, that means the work is when the work comes in, the work, we say, inquiries, it's classified in a way where you can instantly align it with the people who are equipped to respond. Now, people who are equipped to respond means both people who already know or who have expressed interest in that topic. And so I hear a couple opportunities here based on what you described. One would be, if you have those special sort of those pre-existing swarms or working teams created, if you can classify, or you can have some sort of classification method where you have your other folks who've expressed interest, when and how can you invite them in to participate in some of those. You would have to consider capacity and workload to figure out how to delineate time. Ideally, most of the time, you're having folks grab cases from a shared pool. Not every person sees every case. So when we say we get rid of queues, that doesn't mean you see everything that's that you possibly could work on. But if you have your areas of interest, so here's my pool of 20 cases that meet the criteria of the things I've said that I'm either capable of working on or interested in working on, and I can pick and choose from there. And then when I get stuck, I can explain how I get, or classify how I'm stuck, and the people who know who are skilled in those areas get brought in. So it sounds like actually you could take a little bit from some practices from one group and other practices from the other, and sort of blend them a little bit and find a happy medium.
So just a follow-on question to that. I mean, this is all at the end of the day, people, right? It's all to do with people, motivation, whatever.
Mhm.
So how much of an issue have you seen with people's unwillingness to give up the case? Like, it's sort of my customer, it's my case. I don't feel comfortable with other people taking on that case. Have you seen that as an issue, or is that more a concern that you might have, but in reality it doesn't really materialize?
Yeah, well, if you're talking about the case, that ownership is a key part of intelligence swarming, right? If I'm the first person to take the case, I own it and I shouldn't give it up ever. I'm actually gonna go ask if I need help. I go ask my peers, and so the essence of KCS is, or pardon me, intelligence swarming is to keep the case. Now, if it's the customer and they feel like every case from the customer that comes in is theirs, that I'm not sure. That's something I would need to think about or discuss a little bit more. Maybe you try a couple things and see, because I haven't heard that model quite as often. That every time, that sounds more of like a CSM model than a support model. But
Yeah, maybe more the context is if you have that person that the customer is used to calling, but that
Yeah.
person is the one that's going to solve the case, it may go to somebody else. You know, how comfortable is that person if the customer then calls them 2 days later and says what happened with that case and somebody else had taken it on? I think it's maybe more that issue where you have that one-to-one relationship with a customer and an individual.
Yeah, I think then like tag someone in, so that customer's not used to only talking to one person. Maybe
There you
for
go.
a little while you give that customer a mini team of 2, and then at least that customer's used to talking to 2 people, and then you can sort of like slowly acclimate them to
A
that
good sales point. They're getting a team rather than an individual.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Well, folks, this has been wonderful. Thank you for your questions, Geetha and Mike. And Sarah, thanks for coming in and presenting on this topic and allowing us to kind of shift the way that we look at solving some of these problems. Folks, thanks for joining us at the CS Brain Trust, and we hope to see you in future sessions.